VELVIA 50 is one of the last standing professional color reversal film stocks that Fujifilm has somehow kept in production after all these years since it was introduced in the 1990s. Technically, it has been changed around a little bit and it was discontinued way back in 2005, but they brought it back shortly after and it is still here today. Color reversal film or color transparency film or color slide film is different from color negative film, things like Portra and Ektar, Gold, and Superia, mainly because color reversal film goes through a specific chemical process in order to give you this, a positive image on your film. After being developed, color negative film needs to be scanned or printed in order for you to properly view your images, but reversal film can be projected and just viewed right out of the chemical process, right there on the film in front of you. Color negative film is designed to go through a chemical developing process called C41, which gives you a negative version of your images on your film. Color reversal film goes through a process called the E6 chemical process in order to give you a positive version of the images on your film. Negative film and reversal film are designed differently, so you can't just take Kodak's Portra, put it through the E6 process, and expect to get perfect looking color slides back from your Portra 400. I mean, you can put negative film through the E6 process in order to get positive images back, but they're going to be very strange, and it's called cross-processing. It's usually much more common for people to take slide film and cross-process it as a negative, so taking things like Provia and VELVIA and Ektachrome, putting it through the C41 process, and it comes out as a negative, which also results in very strange, weird, unpredictable results, color shifts, different kinds of contrasts. It can be very experimental and unique and creative, but if I'm being honest, oh my god, I'm not a fan of cross-processing. It's just not for me. So today, September whenever, 2021, Fuji and Kodak are the only names left for professionally produced color reversal film. Fuji makes Provia and VELVIA, and Kodak makes Ektachrome. We're down to like the last few here. There are also things like Film Photography Project's Retrochrome, but that is just old, expired Ektachrome and different slide films from the past. If you want quality produced, really good, consistent, brand new slide film, then it's Fuji or Kodak. A little concerning, but what's a boy to do? Kodak's Ektachrome is available exclusively in 100 ISO, and it was actually resurrected by Kodak back in 2018 after they had discontinued all their reversal film stocks earlier in the 2010s, around 2012. Fuji, against all odds, still makes slide film for who knows how much longer at this point. Provia is available only in 100 ISO, and VELVIA is available in 50 ISO and 100 ISO, unless you live in the United States. Earlier this summer, Fuji announced that they were discontinuing VELVIA 100 in the United States due to new environmental guidelines. And I'm not gonna get into that or like debate that here because that's just their announcement. That's their words, not mine. So as of like a week ago now, you aren't technically supposed to be able to buy VELVIA 100 in the United States, and labs aren't supposed to be able to develop it anymore. I don't know how that's being enforced, and their language is a little unclear as to the future of VELVIA 100 outside of the United States, but it might not be around for much longer. But Provia 100 and VELVIA 50 are still in the game for now, so let's take a look at some slide film and I'll tell you what's up with VELVIA 50. VELVIA 50 is a super sharp color reversal film that also has incredibly fine grain to it. You pair that up with its classic saturation and you're left with a very unique film that a lot of people swear by for capturing landscapes specifically when you're shooting reversal. Back in the 90s, the original VELVIA stuff kind of came out in competition against Kodachrome, which of course was Kodak's very famous, also very non-existent now, color reversal film. Now I know historically things like 50 ISO are super common, but now in a world where a lot of people are exploring film after coming from digital cameras with ridiculous ISO options, 50 ISO is a super low ISO for a lot of people and might be intimidating and kind of seem limiting. And it is to some extent, but that's when you have to play to its strength. shooting it on those sunny days, or at least bright days with just nice even lighting, or when there's a really vibrant sunset, will get you some incredible looking shots that would be hard to replicate on any other film stock. VELVIA 50 has the highest resolving power of any slide film, which basically means the amount of detail that a film is capable of capturing when it's exposed. This is why VELVIA 50 stands out a lot of the time, because it's very, very sharp. Like, technically, looking at the graphs that represent sharpness, it's a very sharp film, and you can get such a high amount of detail in what you capture, especially if you step this stuff up to a larger format. I shot a roll of this in 120 on a Hasselblad last year in the fall, and some of these photos really, really shine. It's a saturated, vivid film. And it is really best for like nice bright landscape scenes that have tons of detail in them. The dynamic range of this stuff isn't as wide as negative film, which is far more forgiving when exposing in scenes of high contrast. But most of the time you can still capture just a really, really well exposed scene. Tighter dynamic range kind of applies to all color reversal films over negative films. Negative is more flexible, and color reversal definitely requires a more precise on-point exposure. With this VELVIA 50, you can see how highlights and shadows are impacted by improper exposure. Overexposing just starts to really quickly blow out the brighter areas in your scenes. The sky just becomes this big white area with no detail that you can pull back. And underexposing starts to shift your colors and turn the darker scenes into like a muddy mess that you can't really recover anything from without like it becoming really, really grainy if you're playing around with that digitally for scans. I love VELVIA 50 for landscape and architecture and like walking around, which is kind of the general consensus. I would recommend avoiding it for people usually, and stuff that I don't want to be really saturated. That stuff just comes out really red and just impacted by the scene around them to a point of where it's just not looking great. And it's just not like the most flattering look for people. VELVIA 50 usually is the more saturated and over-exaggerated reversal film in comparison to ProVia 100 in my experience. ProVia is often more subdued, and I prefer it for people because it doesn't as heavily impact the skin tones. VELVIA 100, if you can get it, is also less intense than VELVIA 50. I've also found it to be more flexible as well, and really VELVIA 50 feels to be a more specialized film that you want to give lots of consideration to when you're using it. And I've only shot a little bit of Kodak's Ektachrome. Ektachrome leans more into a bluish look with its colors that VELVIA 50 just doesn't have. But also, like ProVia and VELVIA 100, Ektachrome seems to just have some more flexibility against VELVIA 50. So it does come down to what you're shooting, your lighting conditions, and of course, just your own preferences a lot of the time. But the sharpness and the incredible fine grain of VELVIA 50 really makes it stand out when you use it properly. I like color reversal stuff a lot, and I do wish there were more options, but VELVIA, ProVia, and Ektachrome are definitely all some super solid choices if you're shooting this stuff. And I have talked about it in the past, but again, one of the best parts of reversal film is being able to mount the individual frames as slides and look at them in a projector or just a viewer of some sort. Now, if you're interested in doing like nighttime exposures, long exposures on slide film, then definitely read up on reciprocity failure for these film stocks. Reciprocity relates to how much you need to alter your exposure settings based on the length of your exposure time. Film stocks vary in how they react to long exposures, but after a certain duration in terms of exposure time, the rules of exposure start to kind of come undone. Any exposure longer than 4 seconds with VELVIA 50 needs to be properly compensated in order to get a good looking image. My advice has always been to shoot reversal film while reversal film still exists. Is it more expensive? Yes. Do you need to specifically find a lab that is capable of doing E6 developing in order to properly have it developed as a positive image? Also yes. And is E6 developing a little harder to find sometimes? Yes. But I definitely think that this experience, shooting this kind of stuff, is one of those things that is incredibly unique to the medium of film. Being able to hold your film up to the light and actually just see the image as it was captured in your camera when it was exposed onto the light-sensitive emulsion of the film right there in front of you is such a cool experience. The look of slide film is definitely not for everybody in terms of color reproduction, contrast, and just the harshness that you might get in terms of shadow and highlight detail, and the saturation and intensity of it all. Also, for some people, just the limitation of only being able to shoot in 50 or 100 ISO for this stuff. It can understandably turn people off of trying out these film stocks, but shoot it if you can, if you haven't, and definitely form your own experiences about using reversal film, and experiment and explore. And also, slide film might just slowly be disappearing. So right now, we all have the choice of whether or not to buy brand new slide film and shoot that stuff, but eventually, we might just lose that choice altogether. Thank you so much for checking this out, and if you are shooting slide film and you want to have it processed properly as a positive image, then you need to look for labs that offer an E6 developing process. You can also buy kits for E6 developing for home stuff from places like Cinestill and Unicolor, and I might do that for a video in the distant future once I have more of a stockpile of slide film built up. But that's what you need to look for if you're going to be shooting slide film and you want those positive images. Check the information in the description down below. I posted all these images over on the Patreon, and any support over there always helps the channel to survive and thrive in this world of expensive film and things. And also there's merch for the channel if you want to spread the good word and also support the channel in a more physical sense. And as always, thank you so much. I'll see you soon. Huge thank you to Abby Henderson, Alex Blondek, Alex Onken, Alexander Savin, Ellen Thomason, Amadeus Farivold, Amro, Ana Luisa Bernardez, Andrew Lieber, BW, Babak Motamedi, Benjamin MacArthur, Blake Moeller, Brian DeMartin, Caleb Churchill, Carly Baker, Carson Fuller, Carta Munir, Chalian Chris, Charlie Acola, Chaz Allen, Chris Baltiera, Chris Robb, Chris Rohr, Clifford Graham, Civilis, Dan Silvestri, David Hart, David Kelsey, David Piernelli, Derek Konigsberg, Django Skarupa, Eaton Casway, Elizabeth Viselli, Emma Clyden, Futigu, Gareth Tennant, Gareth Pye, Generation Gap Podcast, Georgie Nass, Jermaine Saez, Juliana Lapadolina, Henry and Megan, Ian Farber, Ian Frank, Emmanuel Wood, Jack Astor Mastro, James Gillespie, Jamie Maldonado, Jeff Yoakum, Jeremy Lee Camp, Jeremy McDonald, Jonathan Hurd, Jordan Wysong, Juan Chanko, Kevin Heinzelman, Newt Holstrader, Landers, Larry O, Leo, Lou Gallagher, Luciana Cuoto, Luke Manterfield, Lydia, Mark Lentz, Matthew Ellers, Max Goldberg, Neil McDonough, Nick Kosh, Nick Steffel, Nizette DeGue, Noah Katznelson, Nth Labyrinth, Oat, Olivia, Orlando Perez, Paul Snow, Ramblings from Canada, Richard Sims, Riley Combs, RTH, Ryan Peters, Sarah Jeffrey, Scott Boady, Scott Vansel, Scott Walker, Sean Williams, TC Johnson, Taylor Brown, Thomas Wibley, Tiago Almanca, Tobias Erickson, Tykora Thomas, and an extra special thank you to Babak Motamedi, Carson Fuller, David Piernelli, Larry O, and Taylor Brown.